Your assets even after you're gone. When it comes to protecting your assets or taking care of your family, you want things to go your way. But if you haven't gotten around to putting together a will, or you haven't updated those documents you did years ago, you run the risk that when you're gone, things won't go the way you planned. Today, Lexington attorney Gina Ghioldi is here to help you make sure that no one acts against your will. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
So Gina, what do we need to know?
Well, I think the important thing to remember is whether you just have a few assets or you have a lot of assets, if there are things that you want to give, you want to make sure that it's done the way you want, when you want, and of course to who you want. So you want to make sure that you put together a coherent will that stipulates who's going to take care of things for you, who you're going to leave your assets to, and how you might want them left.
So as long as you have a will, you're covered?
Well, you have to make sure that the will is done correctly and that it actually lists the information the way your state requires it, and that you have it signed, or what we call executed, in accordance with your state's rules. Every state's a little bit different. So this isn't the type of project that you want to pull the do-it-yourself kit off of the Staples, shelf, or that you go onto the internet. You want to make sure that you work with an estate planning attorney and you are clear as to what it is your intentions are when you're gone.
So what do you need to think about before your lawyer drafts your will?
Well, remember that you have to identify who it is you want to leave your assets to. And quite often people think, well, even if I don't have a will, if something happens to me, my spouse will get everything. That's not the case in many states, including here in Massachusetts. So you have to identify what happens to those assets. So let's say they go to a spouse if you have one, and if not your spouse, and then to your children. But you also have to go a step further, and you have to think about what happens if your immediate family, heaven forbid, is gone. Who do you want to get your assets? So really play it out and inform the attorney what's on your mind.
Do you have to write down every single thing, every single asset that you have or investment?
Well, you don't need to document every single asset or investment that you have, but what you have to keep in mind is that certain assets do not pass through your will. For instance, your life insurance policy, that has a specific beneficiary schedule. That will go however you list it with the life insurance company. Same thing with an IRA. You have a listed beneficiary. So those assets will go how you dictate with those companies, and everything else will go in accordance with your will. Now, if there's a certain item that you want to make sure goes to a certain person, a certain family heirloom or a piece of jewelry, yes, you want to state specifically that item goes to a specific person. But if you're thinking about giving everything, let's say, to your 2 adult children, you don't have to list everything out. You can say, to my 2 children, let's say in equal shares, or whatever percent you want to give it to them. But remember, it's not always a good idea to say, okay, my house goes to one child, my vacation home goes to another, because by the time you pass away, that vacation home may have been long sold. And the one child or one person you're leaving that to may end up with nothing, which is the last thing that you probably wanted to have happen.
Now, what if you want a specific person to get nothing?
Well, you want to make sure that you say that right in the will. Don't be afraid to do it. Even if you think you're going to offend somebody, your attorney can find a way to make it a little bit more palatable, and it's said the nice way, but gets your intentions across. You do have to state that you don't want somebody to inherit if you want to make sure that there's no chance that they could get anything. Yes.
And what else should you think about before putting your will together?
Well, you want to think about who it is you're going to choose as the executor. And that's the person who actually makes sure that your will is followed and hires an attorney to help, or a CPA to help, whoever the necessary people are. And you want to make sure that that person really is an individual who you trust. They might be a beneficiary under the will, or they may not be, but somebody that you would trust to step in your shoes and make sure that that will really plays out the way you want it.
How often should you update it?
Well, you want to take a look. If you get married, or you get divorced, or you have a child, you certainly want to go back and take a look at that will and maybe actually amend it. But also, if your assets change tremendously, you have to go back and take a look at your documents, because you may have estate tax issues that you need to address, and your attorney can answer some simple questions and get you on track.
Okay, so if anybody would like more information, they can go to your website.
They can. It's www.ghioldilaw.com, and we have information about wills and lots of other issues to get you started.
Thank you so much, Gina,
Thanks
for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
A reminder, you can see all of the day's news and streaming video on our website. Just go to NECN.com or the NECN pages of Boston.com, the online home of the Boston Globe.